Spirited Away is a little disturbing, but that's one of the major reasons why I love it. In fact, the best animation works are often those that dare to subvert the idea that animation is only a genre or a medium for kids that should remain simple and clean. And don't hesitate to go to dark places, not only visually speaking, but especially in terms of themes and underlying messages. Upon my rewatch of Spirited Away, I couldn't help but feel that what made the movie so compelling are the same factors behind the success of some recent animated movies. I thought of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and how it felt like a breath of fresh air because of its introduction of actually terrifying villains, and also tackling deep conflicts like death that some might argue are too dark for kids' movies. I also thought of Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio and how it stands out for daring to depict the war theme and show the fascist regime that other versions of the story prefer to gloss over. Spirited Away is a timeless classic because it doesn't break that tendency with its thematic inclusion of real-life issues, some imaginatively terrifying visuals, and a compelling story that universally speaks to both young and adult audiences. It seems like a formula that always works, so let's see what new animation needs to achieve to replicate that same great effect. Just like every other Studio Ghibli movie, Spirited Away evokes that kind of magical, enchanting feeling. It's filled with moments and scenes that invite you to its whimsical world, and that can feel heartwarming and peaceful. It is the small moments and details that make of the whole movie an immersive experience, which is extremely important for everything else in the story to work. Before you care about anything that takes place and feel either those beautiful emotions by the end, or the intense and disturbing moments as the stakes get high, what you need first is to be actually pulled into the universe of the movie. Spirited Away does that right first by centering a character that is easy to connect with. We see everything through the innocent child eye of Chihiro, a character that is so well fleshed out that we can't but see ourselves reflected in one way or another. Chihiro's characterization feels so real because we get to see her multiple dimensions as the story progresses. She sounds like a whiny child at the very first few scenes, driven by fear and a bit of cowardice, but at the same time, she still has a sense of curiosity that equally informs her actions. But her overall motivation in the story proves that she's also selfless in the end. And all of those seemingly contradictory traits are not just attributed to her character just to make it look complex, but they all inform each other meaningfully. As fearful and as shy as she might be, for instance, she can still showcase characteristics of bravery and recklessness that are only fueled by her powerful motivation to save her parents. We get to see that side of her when she suddenly decides to boldly insist that Yubaba gives her a job. When we're guided through the story through a character that feels so real, like Chihiro, it becomes very easy and convenient to root for her and feel every emotion in the movie on a deep level. That makes all of those disturbing scenes like the parents turning into pigs or the terrifying demeanor of Yubaba and her giant baby no face, and all of these unsettling aspects hit harder because we get to see them through the frightened perspective of a vulnerable and relatable character that is Chihiro. But that doesn't only apply to our protagonist. Another aspect of Spirited Away that sets it apart from other children's movies is the complexity of its villains. Yubaba, who we can consider as the main villain in the movie, is not simply a one-dimensional evil character. She is shown to have her own fears, insecurities, and motivations. We see that mainly through the concern she shows for her son, Bo, for instance. When her sister Zeniba transforms him into a mouse, we get to see how anxious and worried she gets, showing her vulnerable side, but also a motivation that drives her actions that goes beyond purely evil deeds. It seems like her duties as a mother are her top priority. Her relationship with her twin sister adds another layer of complexity to her character, since it also shows that her actions can be informed by this competition and rivalry with her sister. And in that, we get to see a villain with her own kind of conflicts and struggles that can go even deeper than what we saw in the movie. And that definitely gives her an extra human dimension that, as nice as it seems, it can make you even more disturbed, because it's nice to think that a villain is evil just for the sake of being evil. Characterizing Yubaba this way works as a reminder that even the most evil people can and do share the same humane traits that we all share, but they still cause harm. And that checks up well with reality, because we know everything isn't just black and white, and people aren't simply good or evil. For a kids animated movie, this realistic characterization is unsettling, but at the same time important and necessary, and makes it easier to appreciate the film. No Face is an even more obvious example of a complex villain, if we can really call him that to begin with. I think No Face is simply an antagonist, because I'm not sure he has any purely sinister desires. He starts off as a lonely and misunderstood character, but as he gains power and influence, he becomes increasingly dangerous and unpredictable. His insatiable hunger for food and attention drives him to consume and possess everything in his path, and it is only through Chihiro's empathy and understanding that he's able to find peace and redemption. But I think that in the same way that he learns to redeem himself thanks to Chihiro, it could be that his greedy and dangerous tendencies were simply a result of what he learned from other bathhouse workers as well. That by eating them, he absorbs their greedy desires and ends up getting consumed by them. We can say that in a way, he only mirrors others' behaviors and gets easily influenced by them. But that still doesn't mean we can exempt him from accountability. That just makes him a more complex antagonist. And of course, we can't talk about any outstanding qualities of the movie without mentioning the animation. Spirited Away has been highly praised for its mesmerizing animation style that, on the one hand, feels very realistic, which contributes to it serving as an immersive experience. There is a close attention to detail that goes beyond what serves the plot of the movie and touches small aspects of human nature and all of the kinds of motion that we see in our daily life. On the other hand, it still manages to smoothly couple that with the fantastical, and with fantasy comes also the grotesque and the unsettling. We see that mostly through the character designs that reflect a wide range of uncanny creatures, weirdly shaped spirits, faces with no features, and the terrifying old witch with a bizarrely proportioned body, and her giant baby, and even the nicest people can look scary at first glance. I'm not sure, but I think that for a little kid, these character designs on their own can be nightmare fuel. Now when it comes to their capacities, the movie goes all the way with that as well. I think one of the most intense scenes is when Haku was chased by these paper birds that looked small but terrifying and dangerous, and the film also doesn't hesitate to paint a pretty bloody image when he's injured, making it feel a lot more mature than it seems. There's also something quite disturbing about the way things transform in this movie, like the appearance of No Face that keeps changing, and Chihiro's parents turning into pigs. These instances aren't only remarkable because of how they're visually disturbing, but also because of their metaphorical dimension. Translating humans' greed into something this grotesque and magical is brilliant, and just serves as an example of how we can utilize the potential animation gives us in the best way possible. Of course, all of this is not to say that the movie worked as this gory, intentionally disturbing animated film. It's more about the way it perfectly blended those little disturbing elements within a world that is still otherwise fantastical, enchanting, and magical in a way that makes it all a truly unique cinematic work. But what I think Spirited Away blended in best with all of its beautiful elements is the serious themes. The world of this movie reflects some urgent issues that exist in our real world as well, and that doesn't get often addressed in children's movies. We've already talked about Chihiro's loss of innocence and the hard challenges she has to face in order to mature and grow, working as a metaphor for the transition from childhood to adulthood. But it doesn't just stop there. The film also goes as far as exploring the negative consequences of greed, exploitation, and consumerism. It doesn't point to that explicitly, but the bathhouse could very well be a representation of the capitalist system, mainly because of the power dynamics and the hierarchical structure that has the workers with little to no property or even agency at the very bottom, and Yubaba at the very top, both literally as she lives on the top floor, and metaphorically since she owns pretty much everything in ridiculous abundance. We see that symbolized through all the jewelry and fancy objects that she owns, and the whole floor that is full of things that are technically useless but are there to assert wealth and dominance, while the workers are exploited, overworked, and live in poor conditions. In a way, the whole bathhouse setting resembles those company towns that existed during the industrialization period in the 19th and 20th century, where workers were mostly paid for their hard labor through accommodation in their workplace. So most of their life took place there, even if they weren't working, which doesn't seem that far away from today's reality, does it? Similarly, no face can symbolize the negative consequences of consumerist culture and its perpetual nature. The more he ate people, the greediest he became. And that mirrors how pursuit of material possessions and social status can grow exponentially. Once you fall in that rabbit hole, it becomes almost impossible to go back and undo the damage that it causes. Spirited Away also has an environmentalist dimension to it, as it brilliantly explores the damage caused by humans on nature itself. The spirit world is supposed to be this whimsical place that is in tune with nature, but as we explore it, we clearly see how damaged it is by humans' greed and pursuit of power, presenting the issue of humans versus nature. We see that clearly through the scene with the polluted river spirit in the series of this movie trying to paint unsettling images that reflect our real world. Through the character of the river spirit, the movie comments on human disregard for the environment and the negative impact of pollution on natural ecosystems. And again, all of that comes down to humans' desperate pursuit of power. This makes the movie really admirable, since on top of its beautiful and enchanting elements, it still throws those dark and heavy themes in the mix, in the way that critically acclaimed media usually aimed at adult audiences does. Think of Akira or Evangelion in the context of early Japanese animation, that also touch on the theme of humans' desperate pursuit of power and the consequences of industrialization. That is not to say other Studio Ghibli movies don't have that level of depth as well. Princess Mononoke would be a perfect example for that, for instance. But where I think Spirited Away stands out is the wholesome facade that it has. Of all Ghibli movies, it is the most appealing to children, the most colorful and magical, but at the same time it's full of dark and unsettling imagery, and more importantly, Spirited Away is disturbing because it's very far from being some form of escapism. In its depiction of our damaged world and humans' destructive deeds, it urges you to seriously think and actively act against those actions. It is thanks to this dimension that it has that the movie ascends to perfection. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you like the content here. Now I've got to say goodbye and see you in another video.